Hello, panelists. I'm Carlos Moran. I'm with the Council for Watershed Health. Our project team is excited to introduce to you Redesign LA, a partnership of women and BIPOC-led organizations. First, I will present a high-level overview of the project. Second, the executive director from Pacoma Beautiful will present on the impact Redesign LA has had on her organization. And third, we'll go to the neighborhood level where Itzel will share how the program has impacted residents. To frame the context for why we are here, let me share some heavy stats about Los Angeles with you all. This map that you're seeing on the screen shows the vast geographic range for the greater LA County region. It's a densely developed watershed with more than 10 million residents. Now, all the red you see represents the boundaries of what the state defines as disadvantaged communities. That's about 41% of LA residents who live in them, over 4 million people. You may not know this, but we have 85 cities with more residents than any other county in the nation. LA is huge. And to further complicate things, hundreds of public agencies and private companies share water management authority or responsibility in this area. The proposed program, Redesign LA, develops the long-term capacity of local stakeholders using a CBO mentor-mentee model. Council for Watershed Health and our project team of CBO mentors will provide technical assistance and capacity building support to 3 mentee organizations. As you can see, our model will implement green infrastructure projects within underserved communities across the entire Los Angeles region. Our focus is on strategically aligning these initiatives and building the capacity of those communities who need the investment the most. Our project partners have previously received capacity building support through this program. As mentors, they now serve as a resource to new cohort members. They share information about their own capacity development and their experience. A big part of the model is to reinforce the mentor's own leadership development by having a space where they get to reinforce their learning by offering guidance, motivation, role modeling to the new group. There is intentional sharing and learning across communities and from each other. For example, we see the mentee cohort literally picking up the phone and calling us or their mentors when they need help utilizing data, support with securing a grant, or when they simply need help in understanding technical details that come with project development. We found that our uniquely ground-up model has lifted each of our mentors to be recognized as water champions in their communities and throughout the region. Now, the timing for Redesign LA couldn't be better. In the very near term, currently, there are billions of dollars available at the state and local level for water and climate resiliency. This funding is there for the taking. The challenge now lies in ensuring that communities most vulnerable to climate change can effectively tap into these funds. Our program has a record of literally closing this gap. For example, over the past 5 years, this model has resulted in 4 CBOs successfully developing multi-benefit projects, not siloed single-purpose ones. Together, we've secured over $13 million in project funding. We know that most people don't think about stormwater, but they are worried about all of these other benefits that you see here on the screen. To us, it is super important that we link all of these multiple community benefits back to the funding that is available. Now that you have an overview of the project, let's hear from our partners and the impact Redesign LA has had on their communities.
Greetings. My name is Veronica Padilla Campos. I am the Executive Director of Pacoma Beautiful. We are an environmental justice organization serving the San Fernando Valley and the city of Los Angeles since about 1996. Pacoma Beautiful first joined this project almost 5 years ago as a mentee. We had never built a physical project before because our focus had always been to power build and advocacy. Through this partnership, we were able to build capacity within our organization so that we were not just envisioning these projects with our community, but we were actually building them and making sure they were multi-benefit. It all started with Bradley Plaza and Green Alley. This project came about from our urban greening vision plan, which also included a hydrology study. Bradley Plaza and Green Alley transform an underutilized alleyway between a major street and a low-income housing community into a shared space that provides ADA accessible amenities, introduces nature into an urban environment, reduces the heat island effect, and manages stormwater. As we all know, we cannot just build these projects and walk away. Pacoima Beautiful continues to be stewards of the space and maintaining it along with our community members. Now, as a mentor, we are able to share our experience with others as we continue to learn and grow. As a water leader, I have been appointed by the County of LA to serve on the Watershed Area Steering Committee, which manages about $40 million per year for water infrastructure projects. I now have the power to vote for projects that are multi-benefit and community-focused. Finally, we would like to center the voices of residents of the community.
Gracias, Verónica. Hola a todos, mi nombre es Itzel, mis pronombres son ella y estoy aquí representando a nuestro gran equipo de promotoras y mujeres de Promesa Boyle Heights. Nosotras tenemos muchos años luchando por el acceso a más recursos para que nuestras comunidades puedan tener ambientes y vidas más saludables. Donde vivimos no hay suficiente sombra, no hay suficientes áreas verdes y no hay acceso fácil a parques, ambos regional ni localmente. El camino abogando por todo esto no ha sido fácil porque históricamente nuestras comunidades no nos enseñan cómo acceder a fondos para este tipo de proyectos, cómo navegar estos sistemas o simplemente el acceso para aprender acerca de esto no nos es accesible y fácil de navegar. Es por esto que programas como el de Council for Watershed Health y la Fundación de Agua, que nos apoyaron y nos dieron tutoría para entender cómo es que funcionan estos procesos, es vital. Este programa nos demostró cómo podemos intervenir y entrar dentro de este proceso para desarrollar más proyectos que traerán múltiples beneficios a nuestras comunidades, como espacios verdes, más árboles, captura de agua, entre muchos otros beneficios que son vitales para poder vivir vidas más largas y saludables con recursos que nos merecemos. Como líderes residentes, este programa nos dio el conocimiento para poder seguir transmitiéndolo a otras personas y enseñarles cómo ellos también pueden luchar por todo eso y más. Espero que nos apoyen para poder seguir entrenando a más líderes y seguir compartiendo este conocimiento. Gracias.
Thank you, Veronica and Itzel. Panel, at this point, we'll bring on our entire project team to hear from you and answer any of your questions. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Council for Watershed Health. That was a great presentation. Evaluators, you're up.
And if I could just ask, Katie, we have David that needs to be promoted as part of the project team. David,
Yeah, do you know what his name is in the chat? Because I'm not seeing him.
maybe active SGV.
Yep, got it.
Thank you.
Well, I guess I'll start. So thank you so much for this presentation. And I've had an opportunity to see that repurposed alley in person. And spending the last 5 years, yes, it is awesome. I've spent the last 5 years when I was in philanthropy, supporting climate resilience and equitable water systems. And one of the things that I appreciate about what you're doing is that project development piece that y'all are doing is so important and is never really funded enough. And so I'm wondering, in your stages of technical assistance, from kind of the data to, the project, whatever, do you take the projects to completion? Or that's my question, because the project development is one piece, but then making sure that certain projects are prioritized, or, I think like Veronica, you're saying you're able to kind of vote on different projects now. How do you make sure that they actually go to completion? Is that part of what the support that you provide as well, or do you kind of hand it off to the community after that?
Well, we're all part of that community, and this is ground
Mhm.
up. So we are part of it through from step 0 to step 10. But I'll pass it. I'm going to be fielding some of these questions. So I think maybe Jason can give a little bit of a background, and maybe David from Active SGV can give you an idea of what's actually happening and how that's occurring.
David, do you want to take it?
Sure. So with respect to the project development and seeing it through completion, one of the unique things that we were able to do for the Merced Avenue Greenway project is work alongside the city to be able to get additional funding for design and engineering. And so whereas the traditional model will have planning or engineering or even a city at the helm of the design process, Council for Watershed Health and Active SGB, along with Climate Resolve, were actually the lead community-based organizations, putting together an RFP, selecting the design and engineering team, and then working alongside the engineers and the design team to have an iterative community engagement process that really informed the design and engineering. And so through this process, we're also identifying and looking for funding to realize the project. The Council for Watershed Health and the project team has been applying multiple funding streams alongside the city of South El Monte to make sure that we get full funding, because at the start of it, the city had about $400,000 allocated, and a portion of that was going to go to Merced Avenue. After a community-driven design process, that price tag is up to 13, possibly with labor increases, $15 million. And so that's the level of funding that we're seeking to get for the Merced Avenue Greenway. And so as we continue to get funding, Active SGV, Climate Resolve, Council for Watershed Health continue to work alongside the city of South El Monte. So like in the construction phase, we're going to continue doing community engagement to talk about the different amenities, characteristics, design, project updates, to be that person or be that facilitator between the community and the city. So we started this process. One of our staff was engaged in this process in 2010, and this project will probably get built in 2025 or so. Fingers crossed, I'm hoping. And we intend to see it all the way through. And so then thereafter, community-based organizations that are invested in this area will continue to offer programming and support, which one of the things that it connects to is Whittier Narrows. So we'll be able to offer ongoing support and programming once it's all done.
If I may add too, Bradley Alley is completed, but we continue to be engaged because, all the construction folks, LA Sanitation, everybody involved, they've moved on to the next project. But for Quite Beautiful, we're still in the neighborhood. People will still come to us first if there's any issue with any of the projects. So it's very important to us that we continue to be involved. And I mentioned that we continue to learn, and because things continue to come up and things that we didn't think about. So we continue to have support as mentee and mentors, and this is a project that we continue to be involved even after its completion, and of course always with the support of the community. Thank you for the question.
Thanks.
Thank you.
So I'll jump in. What I find so interesting about this proposal is just the sheer investment in stakeholder and community engagement, capacity building, right? It's really about that networking. And I might have missed this, but are there specific, projects you've identified over the next 3 to 5 years? I know we're talking about one that will be completed by 2025, but in terms of just the other side of it, right? Just, shovel ready projects you guys are identifying at this point.
Good question, Benita. I can take this one. So we do have an existing core. You saw the map with all of the different partner nonprofits that are within within the greater LA area, and we are working with them to develop some of these project ready proposals. Some of them are more advanced than others. Even within our existing team as mentors, there's projects that are in the works. For example, Promesa Boyle Heights. represented here by Francisco and Itzel. There's a project in their neighborhood in East LA, the Zalazar Park, that is ready. Veronica has her projects in her region that she's working on. David's working on multiple. So there are several projects, and the funding that we mentioned that is available, it like literally it's there for the taking. So either agencies and municipalities and big government and big engineering corporations take it, or we take some of that. And that's why we're kind of doing these ready analysis assessments to determine like how can we tap into them right away, secure some of this funding and positioning ourselves. That's a big part of our work, is not just power mapping to identify who can influence, but actually being those influencers and developing those water champions so that we can move these projects along. And Jalone, just really quick to highlight a point from your last question is, with the funding that's available, there's also funding available for operation and maintenance, which is not always available for many of these projects at all. So this local money that is available, over almost 300 million a year, you can use it for long-term operation and maintenance. And we want that money to really be steered by our partners, by our community groups, and working with technical experts, obviously. But there's a clear through line between all of this, and we're ready to take advantage of it. Thank you. Gil, I saw that you were raising your hand as well.
Well, yeah, I had a question. Well, I love LA. I went to school at Anderson at UCLA, and I've worked in LA many times. And one of the things always when you are flying over LA, it's very easy, as in most cities, to see where the wealthy people live and the poor people live. Because where the wealthy people live, there are lots of trees, lots of parks, lots of green areas. Where the poor people, like the map that you showed, those vulnerable areas, there are very few trees, very few parks, also very high rates of obesity, of diabetes, where the riots took place and so on. So your project would have a huge social benefit. So I think it's great. My question is, how would you measure if you get 100,000? How would you measure that you did well within a year? And also, how do you see your organization 5 years from now?
Okay. Let's see. I will field this one. Cass, you wanna take a stab at this one? I'm happy to answer all these questions, but
sure. I think in a year at least, over the next year, it is identifying those next projects that we can get online, either projects that have some design already completed and or that need the funding to get the design done, so we can get them shovel ready for all this. A lot of the money that you saw is directed towards implementation and construction. So working with some of the conservancies here locally, we can get the design at least funded. And that's kind of part of this model is our team does all the grant writing for the municipalities. A lot of the smaller cities we work with don't have the staff to do that. So like the project David referenced, all of the design and construction grants for the 9.8 million that we've gotten so far have been written by the CBO team, nonprofit team. So that's over the next year. Long term, the hope is to build out the cohort model. So there's just not one cohort running. We want to see it expanded. So there's multiple cohorts running parallel. We want to expand more into the San Gabriel Valley as well. And also, we're trying to also include indigenous people in working with our local tribal leaders as well. So
great idea, yeah, because people have a lot of ideas, but then you don't get funding for ideas. But when you get those ideas detailed and you know how to process and how to get it and how to do the feasibility study and so on to get the money, then you get the funds. So I see that there's a lot of future in that. Very good.
Thanks so much, Gil. And I want to thank the Council for Watershed Health for a great presentation. We really appreciate your time and effort and all the great work you're doing.